Right. So he's already done most of the introduction, but I might stress on it simply because yesterday um, I tried to gauge the kind of audience, and obviously there was a lot of students. So I went back to my hotel and um, changed slides so that it suits more to show kind of, I'm not saying my CV or anything, but the way I went through it, and then I could take cases and point out a few things, and then go into the topic that I was talking about, which is future luxury as we see it at Bentley. So I think uh, possibly in India or maybe outside of Europe, you guys must be the first guys to see in hand, almost firsthand, what we are doing at Bentley Motors and what we think of for the future. Obviously, I'm not going to disclose anything that's going to be confidential or anything, but I'll do the best I can. So, as I've already been introduced, so I've run my own studio, which I run from my residence in Macclesfield. And besides that, I work in the studios in Bentley Motors. So I'm almost staged there. So that's literally my bread and butter. But besides that, for all the fun, I have a team in the UK itself, which I call upon when I need to do bigger projects, bigger scales. Obviously, I can't disclose most of the projects which I've done for the last 4 years. So most of the things you would see here, but the bike, are things I've done more than 4 years back. So you're missing out on the chunk 4 years because we've got all the non-disclosure agreements because of which I can't show it. So let's go through this then. Good morning. So everybody looks, probably had long nights, most of the students working on the event. So how did I get into cars? So as a kid of 4 years old, I remember we were placed in, my dad used to work in Tata Motors. So we were placed in Colombo back then in Sri Lanka. And he used to have a company car, which is a Mercedes-Benz 180. And is that skewed again? That's the best. I apologize, it's skewed, but so we'll have to live with the proportions. But that car caught my eye as a 4-year-old kid, and I remember the color of the car wasn't the same color, but kind of a light blue color. I think it had a beige or a cream kind of interior, or a leather red color. But whatever it is, it's vague, or maybe I just made it up. Things that you make up. And but whatever it is, I thought it was cars in general and Mercedes-Benz in particular that I was always interested in. And I thought, do you know what? I want to be doing something with this brand. So I was straight away hooked onto the brand more than just the product itself. And everything I did from then, whether I made Matchbox cars or drew cars, was all around the Mercedes. Most of my childhood memories, I mean, I was brought up in Goa. That's where I spend most time. So I think I'd like to think that I've been influenced by things in Goa. For example, the houses, the Portuguese influenced Portuguese and the Marathi influenced architecture, the colors, the tiles. Sorry, those of you over there, can you see it in that? It's not very clear. Is it possible to turn that light off? Because I think this might probably be blocking your view. Yeah, the churches, carnival. You can see in the backdrop. You can see the architecture as well there. So it was a bit of an Indo-Western influence being brought up. He was one of my favorite artists, cartoonists, Mario Miranda. I just loved him. So, I used to keep looking at this, keep looking at a lot of comics. Never did much reading. All I did was read these kind of comic books. But so to get there, I did a course in engineering. And because I thought that's the way I would get into cars. So I didn't know much about design or anything as such. It didn't exist then. We didn't have the internet as well. So I got into cars. I thought I could get into cars, so I graduated in mechanical engineering, which got me a job at Tata Motors. This is way back in '96, where I had the job I thought I wanted, which was test driving cars. So that's all we did. You arrived in the morning, you tested cars, and they were the mechanics who would do it, and you just write the report and what you thought, and then they'd fix it. You'd go back to the track again. The car I was testing back then was, because Tata was basically into trucks back then, and that was then that they were just getting into cars. They had the Tata Safari and the Indica, which was a project that they were waiting on. So I used to be driving the Mule cars. Mule is a car the engineers test when the styling department or the design department holds the key styling features. So that's what I was doing. But then I thought it might be more fun actually designing this thing rather than test driving this car. So that's when I thought obviously I met people who told me about NID. And I saw the school. I mean, prior to this, there's something I must tell you. So when I was in engineering, when I was walking around in my final year, in the notice board, you know, when you go to see placement jobs and everything, in the notice board, I noticed an illustration. And this illustration hit me. Nobody else, this just completely missed the point. They just didn't see the picture. But that visual attracted me. This was an advertisement for a placement at IDC in Bombay, the Industrial Design Center at Powai. And it just caught my eye, and I said, this is what I want to do. It had nothing to do with cars or anything, but it looked like it was very different. It showed some design sensitivity, which I got attracted to straight away. I said, they've given a lot of thought for that, and that hit my head. And that's when I knew this is what I wanted to do. So it was in the background in my final year that, okay, now I think I roughly know what I wanted to do. But of course, you know, we knew, and I know now, I can vouch for it, having gone to 3 different design schools and visited quite a few, that I love this place. So this is where I went. So when I went to NID, I was a bit disappointed in the sense that there was no car design there. So the first thing I asked was, I went down to the admin office and I said, is there a car design course, or is there something we do with cars in future? He said, no, we only do product. And obviously there was no car design course in the country. So I said, well, I think maybe, you know, I still might like design. And what I'm going to tell you now might make most of you happy as well, is that during my 2 years at NID that I was there, or 2 years and a few months, I never thought my work was up to the mark. I didn't think so. I didn't rate myself one bit. And I would cringe if I saw any of my work from back then, which is good. But what happened was I had this, again in the notice board, I saw this ad for a placement, because we got to do a 6-month placement. And I had an ad there which talked about TAFE tractors. And I thought to myself, okay, it's an industrial product anyway, but the thing is, it's still got 4 wheels. So let's jump at the offer. So I jumped at the offer. And so that's where I went to do my diploma project. So it was a 6-month diploma project, and I was fortunate in that the brief was set, and they had given a similar brief to a company in England. And funny enough, this is what coincidence does to you, is we had similar design features. So it had to be the cheapest tractor, 1.5 lakhs, and that's about it. So the basis of this is, it's not very clear in this picture here, but most of you know the Massey Ferguson stub nose from the 60s or even earlier. So it was trying to hark back at that kind of a stub nose principle rather than the square nose that TAFE was having. And because it had to be the basic, I was almost trying to use the kind of Indian values. So it's like, it's much like a farmer. So if you see here, it's just got powertrain. Now the tractor is dictated completely by the powertrain. So when they designed the tractor whenever they designed it, Henry Dreyfuss or whoever, when they designed it, they put the powertrain, they put the wheels and everything, and then they said, oh God, somebody's got to drive this, right? So they put him in between that. So they put him on top of the transmission case, and he struggled and he just went there. So I did go around the Indian market, studied it, and I decided, let's base it around the guy who drives it, because he's got to drive long hours. And the fresh he is, the more productive he's going to be. So, sorry. So based on that, what I did was I designed this space first, which is where he sits. And then this is the flesh, which is the engine and everything. And this is the bone, which is the tubes, because it had to be the cheapest tractor, so it had to be done as cheap as you could. So this is the tubes, and you just clap the skin on top of it. And that's what this is. And this illustration is a good view of what I wouldn't do now, which is, okay, I placed, one of the things I changed was in this, what is different from the normal tractor is the fact that we took what was over here, which is a fuel tank, which is 35 liters. In a tractor, you need traction. So you need more weight on the rear wheels. So I shifted the tank from there to back there, giving me about 67 liters, angled in such a way. So this is literally a form follows function exercise where you would see from there, you could see whatever, there's a power takeoff from here. So you could see all that, you could see what you were working on. And this is a cheeky bit. Now, when I roamed around in the villages and everywhere, in Madhya Pradesh and everywhere, I noticed that a tractor is almost like a car. So that's his car. And he goes to his weddings over there and everything else, and then he uses it. Now, at the end of the day, they got to make money. So to sell, you can't just say, you know what, this is ergonomic, this looks cool, everything. So the cheeky bit, what I did was actually put this cross member there. But I didn't say anything about it and left it there. And that's a later version. So what this does is you've got the farmer and his family sitting on the fenders, sitting on the tank, resting their feet there. And this is not something you would sell. This is not something you would tell. This is not what the salesman would say. But a farmer will figure this out. They're innovative guys, and they'll look at it and they'll say, you know what, that's useful for me. Besides this, other things included the way you just strapped on the lights and everything else. So because it was too close to the concept in England, who had literally the same idea, even though we worked, I don't know, 4,000 miles apart, they decided to put me as the chief design for this. And so that was my first input. That was the first time I worked in clay, and that too it was full scale. So, so I was posted in England, where I did this, completed this tractor, which was a learning curve, obviously, because being the first time that I was doing it. And that was the finished product. Obviously, I didn't have the... So the other thing you will see is this fuel intake, the air filter. Air filter normally stands out there. So to save all that space and to have an ugly contraption there, I just hid it behind the IP, so it's just clean. And it all looked compact, so you didn't have anything poking out. Of course, the only thing I've cheated on this image is the fact that there's no tailpipe or exhaust. So that would obviously go on. But you know, this is the artistic license we take as designers sometimes to sell something. You can see the tubes here as well in front. So this, again, is an idea, because what happens is when there's a front end lifting, they normally put concrete blocks. I could see they were putting welding stuff and putting it onto the bars, and they put concrete blocks. So that tube gives the farmer the capability to do that. Like I said, again, that's the way I cheekily designed so that it could sell off. But unfortunately, it never saw the light of the day. And I'm allowed to show this because there were other things because of which they had to ditch it. But I think it'll still look, I saw a lot of tough face going around now with its square nose, and I probably think this would still be better than that. Now, I'm sure with the topic of my subject, which is future luxury, you weren't exactly waiting to think of how I did this for an Indian farmer. But in my head, I wanted to move on from industrial design. And having already been in clay studios, in design studios in England, I thought, maybe I need to pursue my career in car design. None here, so I went to Coventry, did my master's there. It was only a year. And this is my final project. So obviously, we learned a lot about 3D proportions, which is the most important thing. As car designers, that's what we are. We should know our scale in 3D so well. And we've got tools to use that, but we shouldn't let the tools override what we are capable of. So at the end of the day, it's our brain. So you might have all the tools in the world, but it's what you draw and what you then put on in reality. So my final project, basically what I did was, rather than doing a car, I did a 3D sculpture. Because that's what cars are, isn't it? It's just a sculpture on wheels. And so that was what it was. I just made up my own tournament, a Formula One amphibious car, made a circuit and decided that's what it is. So it's a car that goes on road and water. I mean, at the time, this is 2003, and at the time I thought, the red car used to always win. It was Michael Schumacher winning 4 years in a row, and I thought we should end the red car, which is why you can see the silver car suddenly going over, although that's a Peugeot. But the good thing was this gave me a few awards and got me noticed. So it gave me the best design award for it and the best model award for it, so which is good. So I got noticed, got placed in MG. I had an appointment from MG in the UK, but obviously MG was taken over by the Chinese, and I graduated at a time when the industry was in its down. The industry's always had its cycles. So I came back to India, having rejected a job in Japan as well, and because I secretly wanted to start a company with a very good contact I had in Coimbatore who did race cars. So I tried for a few months to see how that would go. But as I was doing it, I was always building up my portfolio. So that's very important. You shouldn't be just thinking that's your only goal. So while I was doing this, I was doing a lot of exteriors. Mind you, I've never touched interiors at all. I was still doing exteriors. I was doing a lot of exterior sketches, modeling it, putting it. I can't show, I mean, there's about 15, 20 of them. I'm not going to show all of that here. So while doing that, I then thought the Coimbatore thing never worked out. And so I decided it's probably time to move back to the Europe. And so I was hired by Innova Design in Turin, and I thought this is it, the place where cars come from, style and everything. And so that's where I started working. Now, Innova basically contracted designers to the Fiat Group, but Fiat Group just went bust because they had tied up with the General Motors who pulled the plug back then. So within a week of being hired, I was fired as well. So that didn't go so well. So I worked for Fumia in the time being, but Innova Design decided that they would put me with a course at IED. So that was my third school that I went, design school I went to. But this IED course was only about 3 months. But what it did was I picked up my tools in alias modeling. Very useful that, because this is one thing I was telling the guys at the car design studio as well yesterday when I visited the kids. And I said, this is the most important thing, to be able to sketch model, because we are not Da Vinci's or anything. We could sketch it, we can only sketch it so much, but then when you look at it from a different angle, then you need a tool that helps you. And if you don't have clay modeling, which is rough and dirty, then maybe this is what it is. It's probably quicker than doing a clay model. So because that didn't go so well, I decided, okay, it's time to go where it all happened. So England it was. So while obviously my home is, I am from here, I'm originally from India, obviously. I thought, okay, this is it, I'm going to adopt myself. Didn't happen then. Then I was just seeking to get a job in the car industry, and so that's the reason I moved to England, with no idea that I would settle down there. So I made it my second home, and obviously, you know how the Brits are. Their quirky nature and everything else, literally adapted to their culture. So we would go for any events and just make a fool of ourselves. That's what we would do, whether we were going on a charity event or going to Goodwood Festival of Speed. Just make a fool of yourself. That's what it is, a different avatars of what I did there. So this was the first job at England. I worked with this company called Curvature Group. Now they make they're possibly, arguably, the best model making company in England. The clients include McLaren, Jaguar, Land Rover, not Bentley, but they're very good. Not at the time though. At the time they were just doing mobile phones for Nokia, which went bust 2 years later. But the guy who owns the company, Nick Phelps, he's now my partner in my model making. So when my studio takes any design thing, I give it straight to him because he's the guy who can deliver. So at Curvature Group, we made all sorts of models thanks to my early skills. This was a BA first class seat, a Fairline yacht, some work on the Airbus. A 350, this was another thing which was done in 6 months. This is all modeling exercise, mind you. There was no design input from me. So I just helped in modeling. But what this did was I understood 3D form even better and knew exactly what it meant to be doing B surfacing. By B surfacing, I mean surfaces you don't see. So, this would be your A surface, and everything that happens inside, which the eye doesn't see, is the B surfacing. The bosses and everything else. So that I learned in this process. But I told Nick, I think what we got to do is we got to start, because I always wanted to be on my own. So I said, I thought here's a chance, an opportunity to work with some guy who's got a good business acumen, and work with him. And so I said, let's do a car which we could place in the Geneva Motor Show or something, which would be useful because that would put him in the map of design studios complete with model making. So that's when we came up with the idea of, sorry, I'll come back to that later. This was just a project done in a week, which involved some work with EasyJet, done with Curvature, because Curvature did the model for it eventually. So this was EasyJet trying to look very eco-friendly and everything else. So it was a media thing more than anything, which I learned later. But the idea was using front swept wings, which gave you more fuel efficiency. They wanted the fuselage to look very conventional, which is why it looks like that. The shape of the windows make it aerodynamic. An open rotor that they had meant it sucked in more air more efficiently, and it was placed at the back because this body was quite narrow, so the wings wouldn't be able to take it. So that was the key in this. So like you can see the sketches, he wouldn't allow anything to go very, very concept-y. So that's the CEO. They're holding the model done by Curvature, and that's where that stopped. But it only took a week of my time, so it didn't do much from sketching to modeling, and then 2 weeks later he had that. So in 3 weeks. This is the car I was talking of. So the Ford Escort, I think it's 50 years now since they started, 1968 when they started, but a car from the 70s. So if there are car designers here, you'll see the typical Coke bottle waistline, dog bone grille, bubbled wheel arches. It gave you the feelings of the 1970s. I like that. I love that era, the colors in that, and the cars they had then. So which is why I chose the Ford Escort. So I did a few sketches based on that. So these were the main ones. Now, one would argue that doing a car that's derived from its past. So it wasn't, arguably a different scale, cleaned up form. You might think, what's the creative innovation there? I mean, I agree, but yeah, it's not that difficult to do something like that. Of course, you got to do it right. But I would say maybe it didn't have that much creative innovation. But for those of us who never existed during those times in the 70s, we wouldn't be able to appreciate a Beetle if the reproduced one didn't come, or a Mini. So for those of us who didn't exist in that generation, this would be a good exercise to have a look at the car as it is. So we made a model of it, albeit a scale model, because like everything, to build a car is not just simple. Even a show car would cost you $500,000 to $1 million, depending on whether you want it to roll, whether you want the doors to open, and so on and so forth. So I'm not sure Nick had a spare money of $1 million to make that show car, so we just made a scaled down version. But what this did was, it caught the eye of Top Gear magazine and a few magazines in the UK when it came out, and some friends at Bentley Motors. So that's when I moved to Bentley. So they pulled me there. I was still in touch with Nick, never, because he's the most useful resource I had, and I still have. So that's Bentley Motors, where I started working on the Continental GT series as soon as I came in. It wasn't towards the end of the project, so although as most of you would appreciate, designing a car would take you, or especially a Bentley, would take you anywhere between, I would say, 4 years, 5 years. So the car you would see of a Bentley would have been done 4 years, 5 years back. And so that project had already started in 2007 when I was not, 6, when I was not even working with them. But it had come to the stage where I had come to the fag end. So the architecture and everything had evolved. So I was part of the design development. I could pick out this concept car, which we came out with in 2012, I guess. This was when the CEO decided that, as we all know, the way the world is moving, it seems like more people are more and more interested in SUVs. It's like how you used to have 3-boxer sedans, and then they turn into hatchbacks in the 70s, and now it's becoming more and more important to have SUVs. SUVs is the thing, and even manufacturers like Bentley Motors, Rolls-Royce, they swore by the fact that they would never make SUVs once upon a time. They said, no, that's not us. It was almost deemed ugly and more utilitarian. So obviously the challenge was then to make an SUV that could appeal to people who didn't want these luxury, who wanted to aim at the luxury market, but didn't look utilitarian. And Porsche did that first. Porsche did it with the Porsche Panamera, Porsche Cayenne. And the CEO who came up with the idea, Derheimer, moved to Bentley. And so he said, you know what, Bentley needs to do the same. Because after all, he had success in the Porsche Cayenne, which is how Porsche made a lot of their money. And right now they make most of their money through the Porsche Macan, because now it's not SUV that they want. They want an SUV, true, but they want it smaller so that the moms can do their school run with it. They feel safe, right? This is the mentality. So they needed a smaller SUV, and the Porsche Macan is the answer to it. But it keeps evolving. This is what it is. This is where we are. And we'll talk about the future again as well, where it would go to. So our exercise here was to do a show car, just to test the waters and see if people would actually like Bentley doing an SUV, because would we be frowned upon? So obviously we had to make it luxurious and make it look as we do other cars. So obviously we catered to the detail, a clean IP that showed more Bentley standards. You can see the wood that then gradually becomes the screen. So the idea there in my sketch was to see how we could transition the wood. So you put a lacquer over the wood, and if that lacquer moved up, maybe it becomes part of the screen, and that's what it is. Of course, it's easy to have that. The engineers still probably working on it, but it's what you do in a concept, is try and aim higher than you can. So, of course, it can be done, but it takes a bit of time. But that shows an area where we had the innovation. Also, being a Bentley, we had to use the traditional materials that we use, and that's what this is about. Now, here's the reason I put the steering wheel is, it probably took as much time to develop this as it took the architecture, the way it works. So you can't underestimate even a small item like a steering wheel. So that again, what this did was, the steering wheel that I designed for the show car is now used for the entire 6.3 range of cars at Bentley, which is the Continental series, also the Bentayga. So that evolved from this concept car. So that's one of the advantages of doing a show car, is you would obviously want to use it for production, or at least get influenced by it. Of course, you would be held down by the hard points and everything else. And same again with the rear of the seats and the seats themselves. The seats did make it into production, but the rear of the seats, for example, we always have what is called a picnic table. So when the picnic table falls down, could it be an iPad holder that opens up and lures customers who otherwise go to more tech-savvy S-Class Mercedes in the works, or the Maybach. So there you can see it in a bit more detail. It's got a lot of influence. I mean, it's a whole story, and I could take an hour just talking about it. So why we used checkered, why we used quilting, where we used it, why we used. So it's more, again, like your Barber jackets, it's almost where you have the more wear and tear that we've put the quilting. So there's a reason why it is where it is. Or we've used saddle leather where it needs to be, which is where it would be kicked. Gunmetal tread plates, and lots of other details. So you can see the reason I showed this image is within a few years, the Bentley Mulsanne's stretch used the same principle with their iPad picnic tables. This is an interesting thing that we did. So one of our colleagues, his mom had died of cancer, and if you see the earlier one where I'm cycling as a granny image, that was basically part of his whole fundraising event. So, so he was doing a lot for his cancer society, which is I can't recollect the name, as happens. It's just next to my house, so what he decided was that the Bentley studio would sit down and maybe do an artwork, and we got it to a stage where we could then auction it at Bonhams in London. So we had all the big names and everything, obviously, because it was a good brand to buy it from. So, so I had 3 pieces of my work. This shows a Mulsanne, which is done canvas on acrylic. It's about the same length that you see here in terms of size. So it uses the typical British racing green, which is our Bentley color. But the thing is, obviously the color is not looking right here, but that's where it was. And then using just a technique where I broke an acrylic piece and used the end of it to just make up the grid, except change the color so you see the gradation. And it's as simple as that. No palette knife, no paintbrush to paint the whole thing. Maybe I slapped a palette knife now and again. That was one. And then this is a sculpture. So this is basically influenced by the Speed 8, which is a Bentley Le Mans winning car 3 years in a row. So it's obviously a sports car, which is all about aerodynamics and the streamlining. So that's what I'm trying to show in the sculpture, as if it's gone through a wind tunnel, through a smoke test, and how the smoke would go through if it went through the body. And that's the sculpture based on that. And this is a similar way that I did the first painting, but except this was done in a computer, and then the grids that I used was then laser cut on aluminum, which obviously only just made it what it was, laser cut aluminum, black brushed aluminum. But then I added another layer by using pastels that got stuck within the little grooves that the laser cut produced to give the next layer and highlighted what needs to be highlighted. So these 3 paintings, along with these 3 pieces of art, along with others, fetched us 150,000 pounds at Bonham. So that was good cause for him. This is another project which is pretty old by now. But like I said, I can't disclose the ones that's there. But I love this project simply because this was the end of the Continental. Like I said, when I came in, the Continental GT had already started. The previous generation, of course, had already started. And what I was doing here was what manufacturers call the end of line. So Bentley, for example, what we do in the end of line is a group of engineers would get together and they would say, let's make a beast of what's remaining, because the tooling is paid for, everything is paid for. So your costs are suddenly only so much, which is engine development and maybe tweaks in an existing styling. They wouldn't change the whole architecture for it because that's money. And that's how you get limited edition cars. And GT3R, they had decided they would make only 300 numbers, so that's all there is. So there's 300 numbers of this car, and there were only 20 of us in the project. When I say 20, I mean the marketing guy, the engineering guy, and the 2 designers, which is the exterior designer and myself, the interior. Of course, the exterior designer had, unfortunately, because the budgets were there, only so much, he only could do the venting and bits and pieces. But that's where this project came into being, where we stripped off the rear seats. So Bentley wanted to get into GT3 racing, and at the same time, they wanted to show it off in the Goodwood Festival of Speed. So they needed a road-going car of it, which is what the GT3R is. And so what they wanted to do was launch it, not in a big motor show, but in Goodwood Festival of Speed, which I don't know how many of you have heard of it, but it is the show for motor enthusiasts. So that's how this car came into being, where we had a time gap of, I think, since it was conceived, we said, I think, 6 months, because the show was in June, and we thought of the idea in, at least when it came to us, and when we started clay modeling, it was March. Now, what I had to work with, so the architecture was the same, and I had to change the interior. How do you do that? So we had enough money to strip off that front seat, but use the same themes, which means there's a lot of legals. I'm not going to go into it. But there's a lot of legals you can't touch, the airbags and many other hard points. So the existing seat had to be used and completely change the way it looked, which is what this was in the end, which I managed to work with Recaro in Germany. So they produced it in no time, faster than you could think of. And this is the fun of working with limited editions. Like I said, it takes 4 years for you to see your idea through. And may not. Maybe in the third year, they decide, you know what, we didn't have money. So we've got a lot of canned projects. There's at least half a dozen projects which I've worked on, which will never see the light of the day, but that's the nature of the game. So this was 6 months before you, less than 6. March was a clay model, and by June, it's there, out, trimmed seat, ready. So a very beautiful car with a V8S engine. I completely enjoyed working on this project because of the small team, where we were in direct touch with the marketing, direct touch with the sales, the engineers who were working on it, the engine development guys. So there's basically, I've tried to use the green from our traditional Bentley colors, which is the white and green, which they use as motorsport. And that's the other thing, we worked with the motorsport division, the Bentley's motorsport division, who were at the time developing the GT3 car. The good thing was, when we launched the car in Goodwood, at Silverstone, Bentley won the GT3 racing in its debut, so that was good. So it was a win-win situation when it came out. We went further with design. That's a sketch I've done, which, because I designed the graphics for it, as in the logo, the branding for the GT3. You'll notice that over here, it's a bit in perspective. I don't know how clear it is, and a bit here. So when the driver's sitting where he is, you can see the front fender just about showing him the GT3R in perspective, showing him kind of a speed. And he could see the GT3 on his, so this only exists on these corners. They don't exist on the opposite side. Here, in this case, it's a left-hand drive car. And he would see that in his rearview mirrors. So he's reminded of the car, and with the perspective, it just gives you the scheme. So these graphics were then adopted for the GT3 cars of the coming years in the racing segment. Yeah, that's the finished car, and you can see where the graphics look. So that's the 2 seats that were trimmed at Recaro, with just the tub at the back to reduce weight. The rest of it was carbon fiber, and a lot of weight saved on this very good car. So outside of Bentley, I did this work for a music console. So they had seen this work, some of my work, and they got in touch with me. The Manchester R&D had were developing a console. Now this is how it looks. So there's a lot of, so let me tell you a bit about this. So this is obviously product design. Now, as car designers, and one of the reasons that I have my own studio is it gives me, it's good, it's fun doing what I do, which is designing cars. But then when you have the opportunity to work on other things, be it product, graphics, or furniture, it's interesting because your mind starts to think in a different angle, and you're very strong with your 3D form. So you feel as a product designer, I didn't get that feeling, and this is why I never rated myself at NID. It's not NID's fault, it's my own skills at the time. So this was a thing I said, that's not bad. It looks like just a box, and you need to cover the box, which is what it was. Plain and simple. Of course, product designers would argue it's not that, but they had, let's call it the meat, all the armature and everything else. You can see the box there, which is a small version of that, but normally you would have a mixer, which is pretty big, with the sliders and everything else. So I've actually put the smallest piece there is. I couldn't find one yesterday, last night when I was searching to update this. And so this is where, because I was busy with Bentley at the time, I called my team from, I've got these network of designers who I have at a call. So they did a few sketches, I did a few. And what we did was we managed to convince their engineering team to get all the gobbins that you have here which is all over here. And we said, let's just get it clean. And what we need to see is just the side so that it looks slimmer than it should. So it just looked like a slim piece there. And what the eye would look at would be only the slim piece there, because what I found straight away was how chunky it was and just didn't appeal. It just looks like a box with, so it was as simple as that. And then of course, you can see in the view, you would just read mostly that. You would see fresh air there, giving it a cleaner look. So all your extensions, because they've got a lot of connections and everything that they need, can't be avoided. Also, the circuit boards need to be cooled up, which is why it's got the surfacing the way it is, so that there's more surface area within the same space. And then obviously going into details, this is an extension which they were hoping I would do, which I did, but I'm not sure they could make it in the end. But so details of how the sliders would look. So that's an eye, because that's little jewelry for him, but rather than if you have a look at the normal one, it's just blocks. So this would be how it would be in a off condition, and when the DJ approach, you've got it all lighting up, and he's back into business. So this was launched in California within 6 months again, and that's an example. As you can see there, the sliders and everything else they've retained from the past. But that's the nature of the game. You don't all get it. But it did change the industry there, and I can see a lot of, it's the best flattery when people start copying it. So I can see a lot of other music consoles doing just the same. So like I said, it's always good to do something else, and this I can't leave. I just keep doing a lot of artwork all the time when I come back home. So I carry my work. I wouldn't say carry my work home. It's not the only thing you do at, you like to keep drawing and keep your mind refreshed. So I have a Royal Enfield here when I come home, and that's my daughter and my nephew sitting there. So this is based on that. And ever since because she liked it, I made a T-shirt for her for that. So then I started selling T-shirts, which was with prints, but it was not more for making money, just because I wanted to have fun. And usually it was for me to wear, and it was cheaper to get it bulk printed, so I could then sell off the others. Now this is a good example where this would be done, say, lunch hour. So we'd have this 1 hour lunch hour. I'd come back, and then you've got your Cintiq, which is a floating device, and then you just sketch on it. And before you get into your second half of the day, just to freshen up your mind, you just sketch. So these bikes are examples of what I did over lunch hour, half an hour business, just vertical lines, which is why it's as simple as that. If you notice, there's not any other lines but vertical lines, of course, the headlight circles. But it looks like it took more time than that, and it's only because I found a way of just doing, almost trying to change my style of drawing, because most of my sketches, which was out there and everything else, was my usual style, which is I've adopted because it's easier to use. I'll talk about that again. But what this did was, of course, I did a few T-shirts again, and it got noticed by, I think the next sketch here. So this sketch is a Royal Enfield, which is a cafe racer that was designed by my friend, also from Coventry, for Royal Enfield in their Leicester studios in England. So there's a motorcycle company, cafe race builder called Sinroja Motorcycles, which is a bunch of two Indian brothers from Gujarat, Baroda, I think, and they started doing it, and they were doing pretty good work. 2 young boys. So I said, okay. He noticed it in one of my I think posts or something like that. He noticed it, or he noticed a T-shirt. I'm not very sure. Or Adrian probably showed it to him. And he said, hey, let's make some T-shirts for this. I said, yeah, let's go. I'll come over and meet you. Now this, again, it's because this has come out of hobby rather than because I get paid by Bentley anyway. So that's my pay. But that's a luxury I have of doing work like this. It doesn't take much time. But when he called me over, I realized that there is an event in London called the Bike Shed. Now, off late, which is why Royal Enfield is selling more than any other transport company in the world. It makes more money, by the way, than any car or bike company in the world per product. And why is that? Because there's been a boom. The guys who are 25 can afford more now, And they want to get those bikes because in India, we've got a big population that's 25 years or around that age. Or the guys who are 40 plus like me, we then see, hey, I used to want that bike when I used to be a kid, but I couldn't afford it, but I can now. And Royal Enfield tapped on that. And that's what is going on in the rest of the world as well, where they're starting to build cafe races from the 50s, things that were styled back then, harking them back. And cafe races are literally that. They race from one cafe to another. And very famous in the 50s. They've got a typical style. And so there's a build. So this build in bike shed is basically demonstrating a donor bike, which would be a Honda or a Yamaha, completely stripping it off, using the same engine, same powertrain, and cladding it with new tank and everything else, and it looks like a totally new bike. So TW Steel makes a bike every year called the Son of Time, and cafe race builders pitch for it. And the bike they had was a BMW R90 as a donor bike. Now, because I had that myself, and because I like bikes, I said to Sinroja, I said, look, you know what, I'll get that pitch for you. And in this case, I actually said, don't pay me, let's just do this for fun. So that's something I just wanted to do because I enjoyed doing it. That's TW Steel with the detail that I've used in my detail that you see. That's the R90. And initially I said, so that's a typical cafe racer style, with the tail the way it is. The tail ends in line with the rear axle, almost a straight horizontal line that just goes straight onto the front wheel. A stance that makes it look more planted, makes it look aggressive. And this was obviously a predictable version. This is what everybody would expect. So then I did a more conceptual version of it, which is from the tag going here. And this is an example of what I did when I was, when both of us I never met the guy after that. We were just relaying it with each other through WhatsApp and emails. So he said, no, I think we might change that. So here I've made that usual hump look very light and everything else, but use the TW Steel graphics with a wheel. And he said, no, I want a more boxy one. So I said, you mean something like this? So this is what he wanted, more boxy one, more rectilinear lines and everything else. So did a bit of a mix of the two and then constructed, so basically stripped off. This is what I mean by completely stripping off, using the same powertrain and then drawing the bone lines for it, seeing what the lines did, as you can see, and then developed into the bike that you have there, which is possibly, and did a helmet to go with the graphics, which is that bike with a small tailpipe and the works. So this shows a full way of what the lines are doing and why they're doing what they're doing, which is why it is balanced. So I did a CAD version of it as well as I do this. So there's a modeler from Bentley who decided to help me. It didn't take me much time to get this, and that's where it is. You can see the details. And even though he wanted a rectilinear form, I needed some section in the tank that made it look interesting than have just a flat tank. So that's what that is. And it came out in the bike shed this summer. Yeah. So continuing with the hobby. So this is a typical style I would do, which is, it shows the main form. There's no gradient there, and it's just flat. And I like working in this style. So this is after I discovered I could do vertical lines and do a bike. I decided, unfortunately, the skewed up image doesn't show it that much. So this is the vertical line with which I did a Defender. Or this is something I caught at Ace Cafe in London, where I'd been there, took a lot of pictures, and then compiled them together and formed that. Again, horizontal lines this time to form the motorcycle. Yeah, so every time I would go on a holiday, I would sketch the daughter. This is in Machu Picchu, where I sketched her again, this time with slanted lines, or vertical lines in this case. And this was a t-shirt I did, but these are things that I've just put there because it's not about designing forms and cars. So this is Frida Kahlo and all her pets in there. So if you look closely, there would be all her pets, her parrots and her frog and her monkey and her dog. It's all in there. But it formed a good t-shirt. Obviously, the wife went around and it sold again because everybody wanted the T-shirt. And this is a work I did for, I reproduced it digitally. It was done in a 3 meter by 1 meter in acrylic. But this was my experiment again. So my friend who had a housewarming, I decided, okay, I'll do a painting for you. But it basically included the cars I had a link with. So here's the GT3R, which is, and this is the track going car, that's the road car, and that's your blower. And he lives in London, so London skyline. This took about 1.5 years because I was doing it now and again. It's not because it took that much time, but because I was procrastinating, and it's easier to do things digitally than do it, in acrylic. And then I finished it by putting in a resin coating over it, so which was a learning curve again. I say learning curve because I did that, it has influenced some work that I'm doing right now, which hopefully you guys will see next year, but I can't disclose about. And then this was good, so good enough for Bentley to then take it over to their London shows for the dealership events. This is a Speed 6 concept car. Yeah, so thank you. It looks a bit silent, but thanks for your attention so far. I'll take a break after the next slide, because this is what I came here for. What is future luxury? And for this, so like I said, initially I thought the crowd I'm going to address to would be about 25, 30 people max. And so I was going to divide you guys into teams and then do a little workshop so it becomes more interactive. And half of you guys could wake up as well. So, because I'm not the best, I don't have the best oratory skills, I guess, to keep it going. So my idea was, if we could, maybe 3 or 4, form little teams with your neighbors and everything else. It's only twice that I'm going to ask you for your attention. This is one time, and I'm only asking for a few minutes so that I can go ahead with the thing. It's just between yourselves or individually. Think, what are your perceptions of luxury? We could do this before I tell you what my, what about my workshop itself, which is the future luxury. So what does luxury mean to you? If you can, amongst yourself, just write it down, scribble it, or think what it means to you and just shout out. I'll give you about 2 minutes and tell me what ideas come into your head. Just let it be anything. Just let it be anything. Thanks. Okay, so let's go. Yeah. Okay. Different. Yeah, okay, yeah, fine. But that's exactly what I'm asking. How does it differentiate? That's what we need to know. So what is that differentiator? Any other ideas? Comfort. Okay. Right, cool. Yeah? More personalized? Customized? Unique? Pampering, yeah? Yeah. 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 Good point. Sorry? Royalty. Yeah, okay. Very premium. Okay. Good, yeah. Okay. Unique. Yeah, we heard that. More than what you need. Okay. Yeah, more than necessity. Caring. Okay. It's a black hole. Why do you say it's a black hole? Because it's never ending. You just get into it. Okay? Yeah, human nature, we just want more and more. Yeah, true. Rare. Yeah, like unique, you mean. Yeah. Okay, yeah, rare, fine, yeah. Statement. Makes you feel superior. Right, okay. That's a different one. Sorry? It's a mindset. So, it's to dream. Come, okay. Identity, right, okay. Yeah? It's a good one. Okay. Yeah, so I think most of you summed up what it is, so we've got a good idea. Not that I'm going to walk off now saying, okay, you got the idea. But maybe I could stress a bit more on that, because it does cover every point that you said, and maybe more. But what is that? What is that something more? Let's get into it. What do you think luxury means to this guy? He's a tramp. What does it mean to him? So, is a bar of soap good enough for him? Is that luxury for him? Like, he's never seen a bar of soap, not had a shower. Or just a shelter with a roof on top of him? Is that so? So that's luxury for him. I mean, he's surviving, right? So he's got all the needs he wants. He's surviving. As far as he's concerned, he's okay. That's a luxury for him. Even that bed looks dirty, but he can survive in there. What would it mean to Victoria Beckham then? What does it mean? It's something bohemian. So does that equivalent for her mean, you know, a nice exotic bath? Stay in Burj Al Arab on top, arrive there in style, stay there. So what is it that defines luxury? Is it money? Obviously none of you said that, so bling, you know, it's a way to differentiate. Nothing wrong with that. Or somebody here said rare. So does that mean that's rare? Does it mean rare and power together? Does it mean hunting down an exotic animal, putting him under your foot and saying, I feel the power that, you know, nobody else has. It's boosted my ego. That's luxury, isn't it? Because it's actually illegal to do that. Or does it mean just covered with technology? You've got all the tech in the world. Is that luxury? Somebody here said experience of the time, but it's a bit like this. It's a bit like this sand timer, and how that sand grain flows. I mean, think about it. Think of your life as that, and then when you were born, the timer was turned on, and the sand is slowly seeping through. And this tells us we're just mortals here. So as the sand grain goes, that's your life. That's just going down. So in that passage of time, it's how much is that moment, is that time, isn't it? Could it be freedom from social change? You know, we don't like our insurance, we don't like the taxes we pay. You know, you go back home and then your bai wali hasn't come, or something or all these things that hit your head, that the daily nuances of life, you just free from that. Or even social media. It's the biggest modern day slavery tool, isn't it? Is it about seclusion? So you're in a glass house like that. You're on your own. You're still enjoying the environment. You got what you want. You're secluded from the rest of the world. So much so that you kind of build yourself a glass house. So you're nearly not spotted, secluded. Or is it exclusion? Private island on your own with the things that you want. Is that luxury? Maybe is it arriving somewhere in style like that? I think again somebody quoted about this, which is that moment of that occasion. So you come in a red carpet. Now, do you want to just turn up in a bicycle? I don't know how clear it is, but this is a bamboo-built high-tech bicycle. So maybe you still want to, in both cases, you want to arrive in style, but doesn't mean you want to have a red carpet, or does it mean you want to use sustainable materials and everything else? So you're not only harking about a bike that's high-tech and probably more, very expensive, lightweight, and does its job, but it's sourced from sustainable materials. Would it be about having your own private jet with all the luxuries you want, fly point A to point B, or would it mean having a flying suit and just enjoying the experience? Or just cut away from everything, every technology that there is, be on your own, surrounded by the mountains, a lake, in your own boat, and you enjoy the moment. I'm sure most of us, when we must have at some point done this. And we just love the experience because you're cut off. Is that a luxury? But we say, oh, when can we do that? So there you go. That's the time. Is it this way? Instead of that, you're actually still away, but you're still connected with it, and you can fly off whenever you want. In that case, maybe not. Is it about camping, just wild camping by the sea or by some beautiful place? Or is it about doing the same thing and enjoying it, like this Taj in Udaipur with all your friends and everybody else, being pampered? Is it going to a Michelin star hotel and then you can appreciate the chef who's done this, he's gone through a lot of hard work for 6 or 7 years before he was qualified to even do that. And he's made that the dish there and put all the embellishments and everything else, and it's an art form for him. There's a lot of effort gone into him. He loves it. It's a piece of art for him. But that's good, isn't it? That's luxury, and being served by somebody like that. Or is it what your mom just gives you, dal chawal? It's comforting food for most of us. It does the job as well, but it's luxury. Sometimes you think that's what I want. Is it about going to Savile Row in London and designing your own suit? You know, if you had the money and money was no limits, you get one of these. Or a designer jean that would cost you as much but looks the way it looks. Or a completely star-studded heel, diamond-clad, everything else, which you might be uncomfortable in. Or what do you call it? You call, when you walk through sand, what is called pro-perception, where you're balancing yourself and enjoy. So that's where your kind of mind is. You're feeling the texture of the sand and enjoying that moment. Whereas here, you're having to get worried, perhaps. I don't know, but maybe you feel good that it's diamond glittered. Now, you know, when they say a pen is mightier than a sword, when say there's a treaty signed. So on an occasion like that, maybe you want to have a diamond crusted 18-karat tip fountain pen to sign off, because maybe there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, you might say, do you really need that as compared to, let's say, a biro does the same job, right? And if you lose one, you don't mind. But maybe you want to celebrate an occasion and it's an event. So the perceptions could be anything. So has this actually changed your perception of what we just talked about from, you know, it kind of possibly a bit different from, but I stressed on it. Some of you did stress some of it. And so therefore, I will go to my main event of what I think is an insight from, say, our studio of what we think the future of luxury could be and what our vision could be. It probably stresses on what we just talked about. So as we talked about all this time, it is the sand timer that I've used there. And the sand timer, it talks about time. It's that moment. Like I said, that's the life going down. It's how we enjoy that moment. And I think me being in my almost in my mid-40s, I'm suited in a place because when I was like y'all, or at least a majority of y'all, we take things for granted and we say, well, this is how it is. You know, like I'll give you an example. Yesterday I was coming back from Ahmedabad, and for old time's sake, I just pulled over and had a cigarette and tea by the roadside. I hadn't done that for a real long while, but it was that moment that I was trying to recall what I did, and it's something you guys must be doing now. But cherish it, because maybe after some time you guys might think, I want to do that. It's not that I enjoy doing that all the time, but for old time's sake, at that point of time, that was my luxury. So I enjoyed that moment and cherished it. I will remember it rather than the thousands others I've done in the past. So it's that moment of time that luxury is. As we already, it's like an onion skin. So let's delve into it and peel off the skin slowly and see what it is and get into the crux of it. We already established that it's not about the material world, perhaps. It's more, I'm sure most of you would agree. Would you want a gold-plated tissue paper to wipe your bum? I mean, does it make, I'm not sure. So is that real luxury? Maybe some people do get the kicks, I don't know. It's beyond necessity, as somebody just pointed out here as well. And what we mean by that is, you can survive, like that tramp as well, or you can survive on that. That's good enough. You're not going to die. You can have bread and water, and you can survive. But then, like somebody else pointed out, it's how can we, your own personal thing. Like you pointed out with the black hole, you want more. Your desire inside is you want more, and you say, I can't survive on bread. Maybe I need healthy stuff. Maybe I need more greens. And so then the greens suddenly become luxury, isn't it, in front of bread and water. And this is what you would have expected me to say for a while about Bentley luxury and what this is, what it means in the automotive field. So Bentley's been making luxury cars for the last 100 years, which is since 1919. Next year is our centenary year. And when I put the slide on, I actually realized I've contributed to more than 10% of it, having been working there for more than a decade. So that puts me in a good position, that along with what I talked about my age, which is, as youngsters, you take it for granted, a lot of things, and it's when you get old that you realize, I wish I had done that, and I wish I had done that, and it's that moment. And I'm in that cusp where you think, okay, we are just mere mortals, and how do we enhance it and enjoy the moment that we have, enjoy what we have. If you are healthy right now, let's enjoy that moment. And how do you do that? So Bentley Luxury is about what we will discover now. We have 4 pillars which make what we call Bentley Luxury. One is sporting luxury. So in the 30s, Walter Owen Bentley, when he created the company, it was more to build race cars. That's all he had in mind. He wanted to build race cars for Le Mans and win races, and which he did. So there's the sporting heritage which the company has, and the sporting heritage and the mindset of the drivers make their way into the car. So that's one of our strong pillar. It's production quality. So what other manufacturers would classify as okay would be not okay at all for us. So it's the level of detail we would go at, which is, things like, we all know we need the stitch lines to go the way it is. Even if a foam looks wrong, we would call it back. We would pull it out, and we sometimes had to change the design because the foam just looks wrong. The foam that's covered by the leather. If the stitches don't look like they're going parallel, then it's called off. Or the door shut. When you shut the door for Bentley, it's the sound that it creates. We look into that. And you don't usually need to slam it, because if you just close it like a fridge, it shuts by itself afterwards. So it's all these details that you look at. It goes on the list. Material honesty. So the car uses materials that is what it is. So what you see is what you get. So when you see wood, unlike in a jet plane or a BMW or a Mercedes, it's not fake wood, it's not fake leather. It is wood. Now before you take your eyebrows out, it does come from, all the wood is grown in California through a sustainable forest from where it comes. So it's not like we cut down forests for that, but it does come from. So the veneer that you see is what it is. This is an example of the vent, and this is what you see. It is steel. It is not plastic that's chrome plated. It is steel. So when you touch it, you'll feel cold or you'll feel hot, depending on what it is, which you wouldn't with plastic. So that's the level of detail. So what you see is what you get. That's what we always stress on. The leather you sit on is leather, so the tactile feel that you get is what it is. And design integrity, because there's a strong brand identity where we go back to the R-Type Continental from the 50s. We use cues from that. The double headlamps that you see carried on. It's not retro styling, mind you, but we're using the cues from it. The power line that you see there carried over, the haunch that you can see from the car. Even the sill detail here at the bottom, the chrome that's used in the brightware that's used, the way the fender, the grill draws to the bonnet. Or here's another example, which is, the bullseyes. We call them the bullseyes. This is the air vent. These were from cars back in the days, and we still use that. This is what we call an organ stop, and what we had back then, we still use it. So there's that element of touch which a Bentley driver can identify with the past cars. Or this is a detail of the tail light, which comes from the Flying Bee, which we put in the front of the car. So using the same ideas from within. So I had this question from a journalist somewhere, what influences we use. Normally you have a competitor that you put down and everything else. But I'll be honest, at Bentley we just designed, so we didn't have anybody to look to and say, look, that's what they're doing, let's do that. No, we're fortunate that we don't have to do that, and we set up because we've got a good tradition ourselves. Here's another example. So this is a 6.5 liter engine. So I put some of these slides based on an interview yesterday where I could show more about the design integrity. You'll see the way the light is held together, the headlight, it's got the almost like a tripod, which is there in the detail of this new Mulsanne hybrid. So it's carried over. You can see uh, the connection. These are the 4 pillars that we're talking of. Now that we've established what Bentley is based on in terms of luxury, we'll see what are the perceptions of a Bentley customer. This is what you would think would be a perception of a Bentley customer. And this is what we think in the studio. For us, this is it. So we call them classical. These are the guys who fly in their private jet, get there. So they don't want to be seen. They want to be, again, the perception of luxury differs. For example, if you're in India or say in the US or in Arabia, maybe you want to show off and your idea of luxury is being on the roadside, showing your big house and showing all the bling and saying, look, that's the big house I own. But in England, it might be a bit different. In England, I find that all the expensive areas are right there in the most rural areas because they want to be, London an exception, is because they want to have that, they want to be on their own, but they'll have all this surrounded by all the luxury, and that's their idea of luxury. That's their way of showing off. But these guys are not exactly showing off. They want to have their own private life. So fly in their own planes, arrive in their cars, and this is how we expect our customer to be, or that's why we call them the classical customer. Then you have the superficial customer. These are the superstars. The Mario Balotelli there, it's probably 3 call girls in Manchester City on a night out. All he's trying to do is trying to show off a Bentley because he wants to say, look, I can own the most expensive car because I've just got a lot of money. So that's what I'm doing. So he's the brash, superficial customer. He's a customer all the same. And then you have the enthusiast. And the enthusiast is the guy who loves driving. He's the guy who enjoys the car for its performance. So while the classical customer might be the guy who likes to be more chauffeur-driven and the occasional drive, he might be the enthusiast who loves Bentley for its performance and what it does. And then you have, beyond the superficial, you have the overtly tasteless, which is that man.
Opulence. I has it. I like the best. This one. But I also like savings the money. So when DirecTV tell me 5 months free for most premium televisions package, I jump in it.
So you can see everything he has is gold covered. He wants everything covered in gold. Everything he touches should be gold. This is billionaires we're talking of who are overtly tasteless. They would buy a Bentley because that's the car that they can get for a lot of money. But unlike the superficial guy, they want to add more to it. So they would go to Mansory or somebody else and tastelessly kit their car up. And suddenly a $250,000 car is 1 million, 2 million because of the way they've spec'd it up, which is what he's done. He's got a little dwarf giraffe. He's got golden grapes. This is another set of customers. These are the 4 guys we're talking of. But then there is beyond opulence, which is the ultimate expression of luxury. And this is something money can't buy. It's for that one-time occasion that the guy would buy a Bentley. It's that one time. And this usually is down to, it's like a coronation ceremony. She comes in the big scarf, she shows it, and everybody else is looking at her and judging her. So it's not so much about, it's an important event, it's a coronation event, and she wants to show it. And that's why in the royal weddings, they use the Queen's car is the Bentley. So they want to arrive in the way that everybody notices it. So that they're seen in one. And she wouldn't be driving around this. She would probably drive a Range Rover the rest of the time or a Jaguar. But on an occasion like that, she would take this car out because she wants to show the importance of the occasion and celebrate it. So now that we've established what the customer base is and what the pillars are, we need to see what future luxury is and what it means to Bentley. So the world is changing. Now, if you think about it, all the mega trends that's happening, most of you are so young that you wouldn't even know there were social medias like Orkut and some friend match and some stuff which existed in the early 2000s, after the internet boom and everything. But they all died. However, with the emergence of Facebook and iPhone together, these two became a powerful event, and therefore social media suddenly changed. Everybody knows Facebook, everybody knows the iPhones, and most of you don't even know life without it. My kids, my daughter wouldn't know what it means without an iPhone, whereas I've seen life without internet, let alone a phone, mobile phone. And that's what's happening. There's a global shift that happens, which is changing so fast. And exponentially, in the last 20 years, we've gone up in terms of growth so much more than the world around us. I mean, than has happened for years together. And obviously, this trickles down to automobiles. Now, they reckon that by 2050, we would have 80% of the population actually living in cities. That even beats Pareto's principle, but imagine that. So it would be so congested, and it would be about mobility solutions then. Car ownership would go out of the window, right? Why would you want to own a car when it's getting that busy? In fact, my presentation was supposed to be about smart cities or something was what I was asked for, but I don't think I'm an expert in that. I'd probably look still into the luxury market because it's where I come from. And this is the challenge for us, which is, do we want to make, because once you have electric cars and you have all the Uber apps and all the apps, then it puts everybody in a level ground. Everybody's the same. A Renault would be the same as a Honda because the electric car, you can get so much performance out of an electric motor, no problem. So how would Bentley differentiate itself and get to that stage and evolve into, and get to the black hole you were talking about? How do we meet the luxury customers, the ones we talked about? We've established that this is our classical customer, and this is our millennials. The millennials are the new guys, so we need to diversify. So we would still have a classical customer. Why? Because of that loyalty he has to the brand. He would still be a customer, but we can't just rely on him. We have to rely on the new millennials who are coming in. Take an example here. Sorry. So if you see again, that would be where the cool millennial would live in. Now, these millennials would have very tech-savvy architecture. That's where they would come from. And the old mansions from where the classical customer comes from. Both might be the same cost in terms of price of the house, except that would be more efficient and everything else. But cost would be the same. But that's how they think. That's the kind of, so you look at the form language of the two and where their backgrounds are from. So to break it down, the classical customer would be the landowners, you know, the kind of bankers, the lawyers, whereas these would be geeks. These would be the tech guys, the tech savvy. They're entrepreneurs. They're guys who create companies and suddenly they've come up with a $1 billion company, just overnight success through their creativity. Not so with these guys. So to understand that, let's break it down and see what it means. I think somebody here kind of pointed out, and it's part of what this is. So we break down luxury thinking into a left brain thinking and the right brain thinking. So this left brain thinking, because if you go back to the slide here, these guys here, they had a very linear career progression. You know, they qualified and went up the ladder, they did the academics and so on and so forth. These guys, on the other hand, are just creative guys. These are guys who came up with an idea, who dropped out of college, and made their money. The new millennials, and so that's the difference between the two. So they are quite a right brain thinker compared to them, who's a more left brain thinker. And that's how you can break this luxury trend as well. So this left brain thinker, what he is doing is he does all the stats, and he says he deals with numbers. And that's why you see that more and more luxury cars then are becoming more left brain oriented. And the right brain, the luxury guy, he wants it because he's not really sure whether he wants it or not, but he wants it. That's how he thinks. He's a creative guy. If we break this down, the left brain guy, which I just talked about, linear career progression, does the facts, statistics. That's a Toyota Corolla, the largest selling car in the world. And the top end of it would have everything this guy has. So he'll have the facts in front of him, the left brain guy, and he would say, right, does it have leather seats? Yeah, it's got good heating system, good even a splash of wood here and there. It's got everything. It's got everything that he needs. It's got all that. But it's not anything that he wants. It's not like, oh, I desire that. It's not what that is. And that's where the left brain is going. And that's why I was saying the left brain guys are now going more mass market cars, and we're not mass market cars. But on the other hand, the right brain guy, he's got the money, and he looks at it, he says, that's cool, I'll just have it. He might not go anywhere near the ocean, but he'll say, that's it, I'll just have it. And that's the kind of guy. So suddenly we've got to diversify between these two guys. It's a sense of occasion, the way you arrive, and that's the experience. So if you see the two slides, if you arrive, let's say from Paris to London, maybe in a Speedjet or a Toyota Corolla, I'm sure you'd experience a Speedjet, that moment. So it's not a commodity, the automobile. That's not what we're looking at. We're not looking at an Uber app. You get into a car, point A to point B. We're saying you wasted that time in that traffic jam. Now maybe you're still going to waste that time in the traffic jam in a luxury car, no doubt, but you enjoy the experience. So you arrive in the car tired, just like the guy who called for it, and then you get out of the car fresher than you are because the experience has made you richer. And take an example of this from Devil Wears Prada.
It's a tough call. They're so different.
Something funny?
No, nothing's, it's just both those belts look exactly the same to me. I'm still learning about this stuff and,
This stuff? Oh, okay. I see. You think this has nothing to do with you. You go to your closet and you select, I don't know, that lumpy blue sweater, for instance, because you're trying to tell the world that you take yourself too seriously to care about what you put on your back. But what you don't know is that sweater is not just blue. It's not turquoise. It's not lapis. It's actually cerulean. And you're also blithely unaware of the fact that in 2002, Oscar de la Renta did a collection of cerulean gowns. And then I think it was Yves Saint Laurent, wasn't it, who showed cerulean military jackets? I think we need a jacket here. And then cerulean quickly showed up in the collections of 8 different designers. And then it filtered down through the department stores and then trickled on down into some tragic casual corner where you no doubt fished it out of some clearance bin. However, that blue represents millions of dollars and countless jobs. And it's sort of comical how you think that you've made a choice that exempts you from the fashion industry when in fact you're wearing a sweater that was selected for you by the people in this room from a pile of stuff.
So I can sum that up with this picture here, which is what you see in the ramps, what the fashion designers would come up with, and they walk in the ramps and everything else. They might look over the top, but what it does do, as we just saw in the video, is it does trickle down to the high street, to your local, into the streets and everywhere else. It does trickle down, and there's no doubt about it. With social media, even more, because we watch what the celebrities wear, and then we want to wear what they wear. So this, we can break it down with how they cascade into society. So what we talked about just now is top down. I'll come to that. But we have what is called bottom up. What do you mean by bottom up? It's when something that's cheap actually trickles down up into the luxury brand. And you would think, what is that? As an example, let's say the Apple iWatch. Now, you get an iWatch for 300 pounds, which is still affordable. But then when you think you can get a 20,000 pound Apple iWatch as well, it uses the same tech. All it does is it does change in material, and that's all it is. It's just something that they've added and made it look better and sold it for that money. So it's using tech that's not that expensive and then selling it to the upmarket. And that's exactly what Omega and Cartier and all the luxury watches are doing. They're using their brand and they're selling the low tech for to the upmarket. So that's what we call bottom up. But what we are talking about is top down and how we would then influence what the others do, which is an example as you just saw. So what happens with this example is, I'll ask you a question. So let's see if we get that from there, if it fails. When I say something, I'll ask you a question now, and you got to tell me a brand name for it, without thinking, ASAP. When I say electric cars, what do you think? There you go. So everybody thinks of a Tesla, which is quite an upmarket car. You wouldn't think of a Nissan Leaf or something, which is low. So how Tesla has approached it is, they've gone upmarket, and then they've gone, and everybody else who wants to do it would suddenly say, we've got to look close to the Tesla. So suddenly they've put tech that could have been cheap, and they've got it down. So that way, that's a good example of how a top-down happens, where everything that we do in the luxury market makes its way down. Another example is, let's say, BMW, which is not exactly, let's say, a mass market car. It's more a premium car, but it's not a luxury car. So what happens is they would mimic what, say, Bentley does. Both car companies come from the UK, but they would mimic what it does. It tries to do fake leather, it tries to do the trimming, it might splash a bit of wood, trying to do what the Bentley does. So therefore, they're all catching up in the end. Even if they don't use the same materials, as far as the customer is concerned, it costs cheaper, and he gets close to that. So therefore, that's our challenge. How do we go further, and what would then differentiate us? And that's where we come to how we do it. So that's our vision. So we've delved into the onion, and we know what it is. We've established what we want. Now, how do we do it? So an example of that would be future craftsmanship. So this is using technology that exists, all your printing technology that exists, and not forgetting where you came from. So I'll come back to that again. So here's another example. This is the gradient chair by Joris Laman. It's a very good example. I love this example, which is an aluminum chair. This is the leg of it, the detail that you see. But it's done with parametric modeling, which is done by a computer, end of the day. So anybody can do it. You tweak a few parameters and you can do it. So it's done there. But of course, that's a tool, like I said, and it's your creativity that would get you a design. So that's the first step done. Assuming everybody has equal creativity in that sense, you've come up with a parametric design, you've done that. But then further, he's then handmade the bits. So as you see here, the thing that needs rigidity is solid, and the thing that might not need that much rigidity is used his parametric 3D kind of additive manufacturing. But there's a beauty in it. So although you know it is done by a CNC, you also know there's some handwork in it. So how the two can collaborate together. We shouldn't forget where we came from. What we're good at doing at Bentley is doing handcrafted leather, handcrafted seats, handcrafted wood. Use that, which is a strong point, not throw it away. So not forget what we came back. And collaborate with the new. Now, that's an example of glass being 3D printed in a lab in MIT. So that's great, isn't it? So you can do the same thing, but to do that in a traditional way, you would have struggled. So use that technology and use your craft that you're good at and merge the two. Would you want that? This is a Byton Chinese car. I mean, I'm not sure if they have enough screens here, the steering wheel and everything else. So there's these screens that's facing you. It's got all the tech you want. It plays everything. I mean, it's a different thing. You might look into it and crash your car, but it's got everything that you have, which is loudly displayed. But what you want to do is be discreet. You want that butler who's behind you, who serves you when you need it. So what I mean by that is, this is a good example. This is the Continental GT, which got launched this year. So in this car, you see a screen here. Now, you'd argue, oh, there you go, you got the screen facing you. But it's not the case, because if you zoom in, you could have the whole thing as veneer. So it's wood all the way. All you see is what you need, which is the tech and what the laws want you to have. And that's why there are some switches the way it is. And so based on that, you've got a plain architecture. It shows off the form of the car, and it's not driven by technology. Right now, car interiors and everything, it seems like, oh, there's a screen we need to put here, but that screwed up your technology. Where's your creativity then? So you still hold that, and then we use the Toblerone technology, and what that is but I didn't say, it's not a technology, sorry, it's a term we use, which is like the Toblerone section, the triangular section. So at a call of a button, that will then switch into a screen. So what it does is, it's like a triangular pyramid. So the screen would go back and then turn around, to then show you the screen when you need it, or when you just start playing with the media. And then for the classic driver, you have just the 3 clocks that show maybe track time and the clocks. So it's the pieces of jewelry you're literally establishing, because that's what is good. That's why people buy the watches like a Breitling or other expensive watches, because they have those details. It shows the craftsmanship. And it also harks back at the traditional driver's car. So these 3 things in the same architecture. So it's the thing that you can call by. So this is one example, which is in production, which I've given us. I added this slide based on a question I had. What do you mean by, because I also said it also means how you apply materials. You've got leather, you've got everything, but how do you go one step further? So here's a good example I found, which I put last night. This is the door latch. Fine, chrome, everything, that's good. You could even make it out of plastic, but we don't, obviously. We make it out of steel, so you can feel it when it's cold, feel it when it's hot. So there's the tactile thing. So what we are trying to say is, when you drive the car, the things that you hold, it needs to have the tactility. So when we do a section of a wheel, we do the section of the wheel. When I mean section, the thing that you hold. Ergonomics might say this is good, but we need to go one step more than that, which is when you're driving it, you're feeling your car, you're feeling the grip on the steering wheel. You need to shape it such that the guy involuntarily thinks this is good to hold, or he holds the gear knob and holds the knurling and he's playing with it, or he holds that door latch, for example, which is a small detail I've taken of the many, and he takes that door latch, but when he goes to hold it, what he doesn't realize is there's knurling behind it. So he gets the feeling of, oh yeah, okay, so there's something else. That tactility makes a difference. It's that small little, an example is when Manjari showed me her card, for example, today. The card was done in handcrafted paper, but her script, you could see the texture on it and you appreciate it. It's one level more, but it's something you can catch on rather than just being printed in a plain card. That will make the difference. That's where you go one up. That's the detail. And this is one of the examples, but you would say, why wouldn't other car manufacturers make this? But to get a knurling made is not easy. You could ask any manufacturer. But we go that extra effort doing that, and this is that extra step we take, and this is why it costs more for the car. So it's not just the brand that's trying to sell itself. This is another example. So then we realized, like I just told you, it's top down. So the other manufacturers trying to catch up. So this is a knurling, which is from a very old car, it's from an Arnage, which is early 2000. And it's got the knurling, great to feel, obviously metal, you feel your hand in it. But every other car manufacturer started doing the same. And what we did was, we then decided to make it a bit more complicated. So we made faceted knurling, which is an individual face by itself. Just as an example, this car, the guy who did this job, the designer who worked on this job, because this car took 4 years in the making and got launched. The guy who made this worked on it for 4 years. The same amount of time the guy who did the architecture. That's the amount of detail. He loves it. He loves the detail work, so he decided to do it. But obviously it got carried over everywhere because it wasn't easy to get a knurled on a circle and get it done. So, but why did we do it? Because this particular knurling has moved on from the other one, and the moment the driver touches it, the classic driver touches it, he thinks precision. So everything looks precise. So what we're doing is we're going one step up and saying we are about precision, our fits and finish. So when you control it, you think in your head, you're thinking there is a nice feeling, rotary. And when I'm driving, the car feels as precise. These are the perceptions you're trying to imbibe in him. That's another example of that. So what we talked about is the balance of technology and craftsmanship, which we showed in the last concept car that we did, which is the Speed 6E. So it looks like a traditional car. Everything is there. We've used a knurled wood there, so it still harks back at the old school technology. But within the wood, we've put little copper eyelets. So that's copper, traditional, very good. When the car opens, when it's dark, each of them light up. So that shows stuff which you can't see straight away. It's not an LED facing you. Minimize all the buttons and take away most of it, and just use the switch that you need to, a switch that's there for you to use. Push it down straight away. Even the classical looking clock would tip down when you don't need it. So that's the kind of detail that it sums up the craftsmanship and technology. If you see, for example, that gear knob itself, the rotary knob itself, the detail that would go into it. I mean, it's a bit more evident here. This, if you see, it's again, we picked up on the knurling, but one step further was actually using wires for it. So there's a layer. So this is proud of the copper that is inside it. So not only does it look beautiful, we make something like a knurling into that kind of detail, and that's the application I'm talking of. And this is where we would try and up our game from the guys who are trying to catch up. So in the end, what I'm trying to say is, what we need to do for our vision for the future, which I'm sure you'll see imminently, is, when I say imminently, maybe sometime next year, is make a masterpiece that is there and you can pass it on and on. It's, for example, a Bentley that is now 100 years, but 75% of the Bentleys that were produced are still on road, which means it's not thrown away. It's passed on from generation to generation. And we're sustainable, right? In that way, we're not a throwaway plastic item, which is going. So, but to enjoy that moment of time, which is so precious, is to then enhance that feeling and everything else, and if you can afford it, is to make that masterpiece, like the Falling Water, Frank Lloyd Wright, or the Barcelona chair, E-Type Jaguar. These are classics. You just love them. You'll have them. They're timeless. So that's what we need to do, create that masterpiece. Or this masterpiece, Michelangelo, in the Sistine Chapel ceiling in Rome. So this is a piece of thing you would remember. It is there. It goes into the books. And that's the masterpiece we need to create, something that's really precious, because time is precious. Thank you. Thank you for all your attention. I'll try and come in the evening anyway, obviously. But if you have any questions or anything, please shoot. I can see a lot of hands. so that means not everybody was sleeping, so that's good. Can I have water?
Well, Mr. Kutty,
Hello.
My name is Swaminathan. I come from engineering background.
Okay.
So when we are talking about, how technology is going to impact the design, how you conceive. Now, a couple of things came into my mind. The first thing is the current edition of the e-cars that we talk about is basically on the principle that you are going to charge them at certain stations, right? And there's a particular design pattern for that. But the next generation, as I can think of, the future would be how you convert directly the solar power in running a car, which means the entire body of the car may have to be made of poly or monosilicon, which has to convert it into electricity straight away, and then charge the battery as well. And then it is going to be a self-sustainable model. Now, have you worked anything on that kind of a design? If so, I would like to know that. Thank you.
Obviously, I can't disclose what we're working on at the moment. You're not far off from what you're talking, but like I said, like I just talked about, is what he just said is technology, and the more the numbers, as you would agree, the cheaper the manufacturing costs. So if Renault, Nissan, Honda, everybody subscribe to it, it's tech that everybody would have. And maybe it's tech we would have, because that is something that is cheap to, and that is sustainable and makes sense to have. Why would you do something else? But like I just described, but how do we that is what I'm saying, is we are all on equal grounds in 2050 when everybody's thinking the same. But how we go one up amongst our customers is what we talked about in the last few values, of how we marry that craftsmanship that we are good at with the technology to create that car, to create an experience where you enter in, and it's not just a cubicle or a pod that takes you from point A to point B. But while traveling from that point A to point B, it enriches your experience because you spend that time there. And you don't just want to be in a pod, sitting there doing nothing. You want to, that's time. That's time you've lost. Maybe that's where your sign timer gets over once you get out of the pod. Unfortunate thing to say, but at least you've enjoyed that last bit of experience. That's what I'm saying. Enhance the time you have. Yeah. And in case of Bentley, the craftsmanship and the tools that we have.
Yeah, sir. Here, sir. Here.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Sir, I wanted to know that in a Bentley as a brand point of view, do you think that luxury also comes as a handcrafted and a machine made? So how do you differentiate as a design point of view and as a customer point of view? Like, does it make a big influence if it's a handmade car or if it's machine made?
Doesn't make a what, sorry?
Big impression as a luxury point of view or as a unique piece if it's handmade or if it's machine made?
So it's simple. End of the day, we're talking business and we need to make money. We can't be sitting there and crafting
So,
something.
sir, so the machine made makes more profit as compared to handmade.
True. But if it was all machine made, then everybody would be doing it. And that's where we would differentiate, which was the last few slides, and almost repeating myself, which is we put the chair that I showed as an example, we add that element of craftsmanship that we're good at into technology, and apply it in the way I showed you again in the last few slides to enhance it. How we do it and everything else is what you would see in our future vision, which, like I said, my slides are as old as, the stuff in there is as old as 5 years back. And that's all I can say about it.
Okay, sir, another thing
Because
is
anything
that...
we work on now is something that comes in 2025. So
Yeah, sorry.
we're not in the same place.
Okay. Sir, one more thing, that a lot of cars are using crystal as a light, luminaire, these days. So have Bentley has ever thought about something to use as a jewel as a point of view to create a luxury car, as to create another statement symbol as to fall into luxury cars and premium cars?
So it's funny you had to say crystal, because we have used the crystal in our headlamps and everything, and how we give it. So we've also used, rather than using the expensive crystal itself, in one of the headlamps of the hybrid car that you saw. Let's see if I can go back to that slide. It's going to be a long way. This is about 150 slides. But in one of those examples that you saw there, what you would see is we've used various points that look like crystals. So when a Bentley is following you from the back and you look at your rearview mirror, you see these two lights that's got crystals literally everywhere. But they're not LEDs. They're actually reflections from the headlamp to the main thing, which then reflects back. So we play with things like that. And the Bentley B, the flying B, which ducks down into the bonnet when you don't need it, lest somebody steals it at a car parking lot, or when you want to show it off, it comes up. That, for example, would use it. I'm not sure whether it's already, maybe it's in the making, or maybe I just revealed something I shouldn't. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
From ideation or market research to realization of Bentleys, what is the cycle type?
So, for example, the Mulsanne, 2005, 2006, came out 2010. GT, Continental GT. See, the reason the cycle time sometimes changes is because we change our architecture.
Average.
We share it with so we are part of the Volkswagen group, and we come under the luxury group. And then the next is the premium group. So when I say luxury, we share our components with Bugatti, Porsche, and Bentley, of course. So when we use the underpinnings, and if they've decided to change something, the main architecture, because they are more mass manufacturer than us, then that would change the situation. But in an ideal world, and that never happens, it always changes because of the legislations and everything else. So there was a car, as an example, that we did have in the making. It was only 1 year away from being in production, and we canned it because the legislation suddenly changed in America, which is our second big market. So we canned the car because it wasn't going to make money. So it's difficult to answer that question, because if I say it takes 4 to 5 years, it sometimes may be less, it sometimes may be more. But I would say about 3-4 years is ideal scenario. Yeah.
What is the benchmark you feel, competitors of that level?
So there is a what is called a PEP process, where you have various stages. They are called gateways. Yeah. So these gateways, you would have to meet at each point. And it's set, but it's only on paper, we know it. I mean, even a German owner can't meet the PEP process. So with their efficiency, it usually doesn't happen, because things don't happen the way we want it to. Environmental issues or manufacture. So the PEP process changes all the time. And usually it's designers that suffer because of that, because our time is suddenly small. So they would have given us 6 months, and they would say, this is when the SOP is, which is the day of the launch. So we know what we're working to. And suddenly they say, you know what, we need to bring the date forward. So suddenly they say, let's squeeze everything. And they think maybe design is what squeezes down. However, that is changing because they appreciate what it does. And all the same, we deliver anyway. So because we enjoy what we do, and that's what they bank on, the fact that we enjoy what we do. So 6 months would suddenly become 2 months before we've done everything. Usually, that becomes luxury as well if we get 2 months. So, some cases less.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not sure if I fully answered your thing, but you can
No,
tell
because
it's quite inflexible.
That's why Japanese or Koreans who are coming a big way, being the same platform and bringing many cars for mass market.
That's true.
So,
The advantage they have is it's one. We are in an umbrella. So although we are in the umbrella with Porsche and Bugatti, they're different companies yet. Porsche designer is not allowed to see what we do, even though we are under the same umbrella. Or we are not allowed to see what Porsche is doing or Bugatti is doing. So whereas in the Korean company, it will be a case of, say, Kia or Hyundai, and they know what the architecture, so they share. So they know what is going on politically in the world and the changes that's happening.
But Toyota, being the number one in the world, being from Japan, is really exceptional that way. So they're bringing products in a year, 2 to 3 products. So
Do they really do two? Do they really do? They might bring out 2 or 3 products, but they got
products.
6.
That's why they are today's number one selling.
True.
Ultimately,
So
it's a
they are
business.
what I call the mass manufacturers. You would agree. They have 600 designers working in the studio. We have 220, and they have a brand range that. Our brand range is what from our stables. You got 4 cars, 4 ranges. They have 25. So if they don't produce, or if they don't churn out 2 to 3 cars, models, i.e., every year, they're not going to make money. So they better do that. So even in their case, the lead time would be the same. So even though they're doing 2 or 3 cars, they probably worked on it 4 years back. Except because they have the 600 designers working for them, they can do that. So each designer is working on a different project.
Right. Thank you.
The exterior may still look different.
Yeah, it would. One
if
model would have the same door
so
from another car.
You take like Audi, Skoda, or they have the same chassis and other transmission parts inside. So standardizing such things inside the car helps you to bring the car out faster.
And that's the way forward, because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you got to make money. So that's how you
exactly.
do business.
So in case of mass production, I think that's the way to go. But here we are talking about totally something which is customized and luxury, which is beyond everything.
Which uses the underpinnings of
Yeah.
our mass manufacturing guys.
I
as
have
well.
one question for you. We learn a lot from our customers also, right?
For sure.
Like a lot of new things you are doing yourself, I mean, within your design team and all. Is there an instance where you got something which is a customer's perception, which is totally different than what you are thinking or something?
No,
Are you allowed to do that, or there is no interaction with customer directly?
we do interact with customers, but that would be more for sales. So it's, the guy who designed the iPhone would have never told, a customer could have never told him to design that,
Yeah, correct. But that's a feel,
that's
like what
an
you
example.
also, yeah.
For the rest, to answer your question short, no, we don't. We do it ourselves. So it's what we
You do it yourself, like
yeah, because
you,
the things we do itself, what comes out in the studio is usually, we do a lot of sculptures in the studio, and they're pretty mad. But the things we do is, our design director says, so that the engineer says, you guys are mad, or what are you smoking?
Right.
So that's the kind of stuff we do, but then we got to make money in the end of the day, so it gets churned down. So that's how it is.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Generally, since you are from also engineering background, as you told, once you design anything, so obviously people do take care about this aesthetics and all. But once you design something, if it gets failed in the kinematic taste or dynamic taste, or we people are used to use this ADAM software or ANSYS, as far as the stress analysis or
part of the
fluid
game.
flow analysis,
Yeah.
then what happens?
So we tweak.
It's a
change.
closed loop system,
It's
or
not. It's not you. It's not. It is. Yeah. It is. It is not. See, the thing is, it's good you asked the question, because I take it for granted that everybody should know it. Yeah. It's not that you sketch something, put a clay model, and say off you go. Bye. I'm gone.
Yeah,
It doesn't
that's
work
the-
like that. So you would be working on another project, and you'd have forgotten about this project, like I'm doing right now. A production car that will launch next year. I've forgotten about it. I designed it about 4 years back. But when I say forgotten about it, I still have to go now. Even last week, I had to go meet the trimmers because they had an issue, and then they said this it's failing so and so. So then we got to tweak that. And in your head, you're thinking, oh, where's this guy? And he's in a different planet. But it doesn't work like that. You can't be in a dreamy world and say, I did it, now go make it. You got to empathize with the engineer. He's got a point in what he says. Where you can, you put your stance down. But that's the challenge the designer has. That's where we differ from artists, is to make it work. And sometimes the engineer helps you because he can see that you're trying what he's trying. And so he goes the extra level and says, maybe we can pull out from there. And that happens. That's why, we make good friends with engineers. We also make enemies. Okay. So some engineer, we almost take it personally and we don't like them. And some people will buy them coffee now and again, just so he looks after your seat or your, some part properly. And you say you're doing a good work, and then he'll do his research and he'll come back. So.
Any questions from the students?
Hello. So I am also studying here product designing, and while creating forms, we are told that do not think in any one direction, just explore, like brainstorm. So while designing any form or creating any form, do you think in particular direction, like as you are from a engineering background, and while mass production, there are some curves or some designs which are not able to be produced. So does that block your ideation?
Never. So while I have got a graduate degree in engineering, if that's what you're trying to point out. It's helped me in the fact that I can fight the engineers with it. That's all it is used for. So they can't make a fool of me. But I never think about it. I wish I could tell you an example. I really can't, my tongue tied, but there is an example which, when they asked me, how are you doing that? I said, it happens, right? That's magic. Fortunately, for the last 6 months, they're still working on it to make that happen. Okay. I really wish I could disclose it. So that's an example of it, where we're trying to, without any words coming out of my mouth, where we're trying to do exactly that. So you never think. That's the last thing you should think. Never, ever think like that. Just, it's always, it's, as an example, you do a nice kick-ass rendering, it looks beautiful. End of the day, everybody looks at the rendering, even if it's an engineer, who's a straightforward engineer, who thinks straight, and he's the boss. He's the board member engineer, and he comes and sits there. And this guy's going to slag your design down. But you put a picture out there, and it looks really good. You've already created the first impression. First thing that comes into his mind is, that's cool. And then your right brain gets over first, quicker than the left. And then the left brain kicks in and says, right, is this guy mad or what? And then he starts having a look at it. And then it's easier to tone it down. But it's not easier to go up. So if you already decided, oh, you know what, the constraint is that there is this, so I'll design it like this. You already killed your creativity, and you can't tone up and make it look cool. Because if you did that as well, like I showed you the example of that motorcycle, the first one, it's what everybody did. And that was a teaser for him, and say, look, and when you do something that doesn't, and he said, how does the handlebar turn? It can be done, but the guy is a small race builder, but he didn't do it. So that's what I'm saying. So there's an extreme. So it's easier to tone down than tone up. So just think wild. Don't bother about engineers. Otherwise, it'll never happen. It's like, an example is the iPhone. When Nokia was 90% of the market share in 2007, and everybody was with buttons, they thought, that's it. We are never going to be. We are invincible. And then, back then somebody said, you know what? Forget the buttons. Just have a glass screen. Which, by the way, when you drop it down, will crack.
Yeah.
And you've just lost a lot of money. And you say, yeah, that's never going to work. But Apple did it. I'm sure their engineering said, what? No buttons? We're talking of button sizes, and you're saying no buttons. That's what I mean.
Yeah. Thank you. And one more question. It's funny. Do you own a Bentley, or does Bentley offer you a car?
I wish I could. I'm working on that. Which is why I started the other company. But anyway, obviously we do get a chance to drive Bentleys.
Okay.
Like, for example, that GT3R, which I kept saying beautiful, I was thinking of how good it felt to drive. So, because I worked on it for so long, they had given me that car for a week, and it was. So you do get the privilege to driving one.
Thank you.
Hello, sir. So a lot of luxury brands has a very specific target audience. But what happens when you wider the target audience and you try to create a luxury which everyone can afford? So I just wanted to know your perception.
Yeah, good question. So that's again the triangle. So that's what we leave for our mass manufacturer and premium manufacturers to do. We don't do that because it costs a lot of money and therefore, unfortunately, they can't because we make the numbers. That said, here's a funny statistic. I'm not very 100% sure of the statistic, but it's not far off. At the moment, I don't know what the number of net worth billionaires are in this world, but let's say there's a certain number. And if you put the number of guys who actually own who have a Bentley, it's way under 1% of them. Do you see what I'm saying? So why bother about the mass manufacturer when there's these guys? And our aim is if we can at least get 1% of that, we're good, we're in business. That's the kind of market we're in. There's a big world out there, and it's funny that, we always think because we only think mass manufacture, but there is a big world out there. Somebody's got to cater to their design. That's what I talked about in this luxury thing. Or like she pointed out with the black hole. Once you can afford something, you go higher. Back in the days, you guys have mobile phones. In my college, it would have been a luxury if I had a mobile phone in my pocket, but you take it for granted. So it goes higher. The pyramid goes higher up, and there's a big market there.
Thank you.
Hi, this is on the lighter side again. I just wanted to ask you how real are James Bond Bentley cars?
How real?
How real are they?
So,
do they really exist?
Oh yeah. They're made.
They do.
Yeah,
they vanish.
Vanish? No, but that's Aston Martin. The one which vanishes is Aston Martin.
Okay.
But Bentley has done it in the past. But which is why I was surprised because I think that's in a very old James Bond film.
Okay.
Currently they use Aston Martin, but I'm not sure if the new one or the one that they're going to come up with uses Bentley again because that's what the author Fleming. Yeah, that's what because he loved Bentley, so he used to use that. I don't know how it went to Aston Martin, but I think it might come back to Bentley.
Yeah, all those works.
Yeah, so that's a Jaguar, green Jaguar, but that's there in Coventry Museum, and it works. It's there. It's a custom built thing. So if you did want to, let's assume tomorrow you want a James Bond Bentley, and you approached Bentley and said, "Make me a James Bond Bentley," not being that overtly tasteless guy who goes to the Mansory or somewhere else and doing. You go through what is called the Mulliner division, which is like the coach building section of Bentley. We don't deal with it. So they cater to these individual needs. There are customers who come with, there's a guy who wanted his SUV so that he could take his Falcons. This is the sheikh or there's this lady who wanted to take her sheep in it. You have customers like that. So we cater to them. But I can't disclose more others because it's the way it is, isn't it? So if you want to know, when we test cars, when somebody asked the question, do you get these cars over the weekend? Yeah, we do get these cars over the weekend, and they're what we call engineering cars. It's not cars that a customer will buy. If we've driven a car, there are one-off cases where you want to put the miles in, and it's sold as a second-hand. That's a different scenario. But there might be cases where it is these cars that are tested. It may not be crashed, but tested, would have run only 3,000 miles. They look mint, and it's what you probably took over the weekend or everything. And the next thing you know is it's in a truck going by, completely crushed. Because if we sold that car to a customer, we've lost our value, isn't it? So.
Hello. Hello, sir. Yeah. So,
Hi.
can you tell us about you are into interior design. So, can you tell us the bridge between you and the exterior designer? Like, how do you match the interior and the exterior?
So, good question, because when you design a car, you obviously want to do inside out, ideally. But the first interface you have when you approach a car is obviously the exterior. So you want the exterior to look good, because that's where most people see it as well. And some of the customers who want to be seen in a Bentley, even they want to be seen in a moving sculpture. So what happens is they would come with, let's say, a fastback and other works. I'm going to make this really short because I can go on and on. So they would do their modeling and everything else, and they would design a car which is fastback. But when a guy sits inside or sits at the back, there's not enough headroom. He's given it so much tumble home that you got to go back, lean back. So then we establish hard points and say you can't come beyond this. And then together we would work, and then they would make the car look as good as it is. And we'd fight with them and say, no, you can't do that. So between the interior and exterior, we'd have our own fights. Or they would come up with a door shut line, and we'll say, no, that's not good. That's not good enough for us. So we would argue on that as well. Usually, the exterior might be ideally you want the exterior to be 6 months ahead of the interior. Reason being, because what happens is, for example, the door apertures and what you call the AB flanges, which is the gray zone, which you don't see in a car when the door is closed. So all these things, you want to establish it so you know how much your door apertures. And that depends on what the designer sketches for his shut lines in the doors in the exterior. And those shut lines come out of proportions. You want it to look right. So you want them to start the work ahead of you so that you're not working together and then there's a problem and then you wasted more time. So that's how we work.
So one more, like your own startup, like the kite design. You are working on certain other projects also, but like there's a different platform like the two-wheelers. Like you are into two-wheelers too. So like, do you plan to go into mass production of two-wheelers?
No, so here's the thing. Design kite and most of the things that it does is sometimes to make some quick money, and also because I enjoy it, primarily. And for example, that motorcycle, I did it for free. Didn't take a penny for it because I just enjoyed doing it. So it's not everything about, yeah, I'll have this because it's just something I enjoyed and I was getting the kick out of it. This is the madman, every designer is, and we say, yeah, we'll do it, which is why some of us actually, when you get into the industry, it's always important to understand that people would take advantage of the fact that you love designing so much that you don't think of the money aspect of it. For example, when I was in Italy, I was getting offers with Pininfarina, which does Ferrari and everything, and they were offering me peanuts, and I said, there's no way I'm working for that kind of money, and having to work in a pizzeria after that or something, no chance. That's why I left and moved to England, for this reason.
Thank you.
How do you deal with if some other companies are copying your features or your design language? So how do you deal with that?
It's a difficult one. So there are some things we would patent, some elements which we would patent, but other things, what do you do? That comes from the pyramid. Chrysler 300C got the similar looking grill as a Bentley's grill. But maybe it's flattery, isn't it? Copying is the best form of flattery. And then there's other things as well. I can give you many examples where they would copy the form. You can't help it. The knurling is another example. Everybody tries to do knurling and everything. So we try go one up rather than beat the thing. How do you say, no, you can't do it? Diamond quilting on our seats. Every car manufacturer does it now. That they've almost forgotten that we were the first guys to start with it. Nothing big, but at least we thought of it back then in 30s or whenever it was. So yeah, some aspects you can't do much about it. I'm sure that will get changed with time. I'm not an expert in that, legals and everything, so I wouldn't know.
Thank you, Rajesh, so much. I think
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Yeah.
Thank you.